Today's day 251 of Blender, and I'm going to make a 3D text with geometry nodes, and I'm going to be using this font that I got from defont.com and the first two colors here to make a little gradient. So I'm going to click on General, and then I'm going to go to Geometry Nodes at the top. I'm going to hide the spreadsheet because I don't need it. Click on New for a new geometry node system, and basically you can think of a geometry node system as another modifier. It's just something that's modifying your mesh. But in this case, I'm not going to modify the cube, so I'm going to disconnect that input. And I'm going to do Shift A and get a string to curve node instead, which is what I'm going to modify. I'm going to connect the curve instances into the geometry, so I'm able to see it in the output, which is the viewport up here. But I don't see anything yet because I don't have anything set as my string, or other words, my text. So I'm going to do something like bubble. And then I noticed that it's flat and I want it to be standing. So I'll do Shift A and get a transform node and change the rotation of the X to be 90. And that's basically just telling the text, hey, I want you to rotate 90 degrees along the red line or the X axis. And I know that it's the X axis because it tells me over here, this little toggle, that the Z is blue, Y is green, X is red. All right, you could have done the same thing by going to object properties and changing the rotation to 90. It would have been the same thing if I were just deleting this, same thing. But I like to keep everything in geometry nodes so everything is consistent. All right, so then I would like to add some faces. So I'll do Shift A and get a fill curve node, put that in there, so it adds faces to the curves, and now it makes it a mesh. So if I go to wireframe mode at the top, I'll notice that the vertices are very messy. So the fill type, if I change it to n-gons, it becomes less messy. So that's why I personally like to change it to n-gons. If I go to solid view mode, I could also extrude it because right now it's flat. So I'll do Shift A and get an extrude mesh node, put that in there, and then you can clearly see that it's extruded. It adds thickness to the word or that string. The way you can change this is by changing it to something like 0.1, right, the offset value, and so now it's a little thinner, or maybe just the right size. But then there's another problem. In the back, it's not filled, right? It's filled at the front, but not in the back. So to fix that, I'll do Shift A and get a join geometry node and put that in here. And that's going to join the extrude mesh automatically, but I need to manually plug in the fill curve so that basically it joins the fill curve and the extrude mesh nodes, or the effects of both of those nodes at the same time. Makes it into geometry, outputs into the viewport. Beautiful. All right, then I'm going to do Shift A and get a set material node, put that in there, and just pick whatever material that is there. Later on, I'm going to do a gradient. And then finally, I'm going to go back to the first node, which is a string to curves, go where the F is, click on the folder, and then I have it downloaded here. So I'm going to take this, and this is what it looks like, the font. All right, in layout, I'm going to do Shift A and get a plane. So then I'm going to press on S to scale the plane, and then 3 to scale, actually maybe I'll do S and then 2. So S and then 2 to scale 2 meters, and then I'm going to press on G to grab the plane, and then X to grab along the X axis, which is the red line. All right, and then I'm going to go to edit mode at the top left corner, go to edge select, the second button, select the back edge, and do E to extrude the edge, and then Z to extrude along the blue line, which is the Z axis. Back in object mode, I'm going to go to modifiers, which is a wrench icon, add a bevel modifier, increase the amount and the segments to make a backdrop. Then click on the arrow, apply that. If I zoom in, I see that there's lines. If I do right click, shade smooth, the lines go away. Now, let's move on to the shading. So I'm going to go to the top, go to shading. I'm going to click on bubbles. I'm going to go to render preview because that's what I'm going to see in the final render. And I see that it's clipping through, so let me take the plane and do GZ to bring it down a bit. All right. So for me, this is what it looks like so far. This is the material. So I'm going to first start with doing Shift A and getting a geometry node. I'm going to put the nodes all in first, and then I'll explain. So Shift A, let's do a map range. Shift A, separate XYZ. Shift A, color ramp. All right, so these are the nodes that I need. So I'm going to take this one, put it in here. Okay, so the geometry node, I'm going to take the position and put it in the vector for the separate XYZ. So basically it's taking the geometry, which in this case is the string, it's separating them. And then I'm going to take, let's do the z-axis. So that means up and down. So our effect is going to be like a gradient that's up and down. I'll show it later. I'm going to put that into the value over here. And I'm going to put the result into the factor over here. And then the color into the principal BSDF base color over here. You'll notice that they have kind of the same color. So purple with purple, gray with gray, yellow, yellow. So then the colors come in here. So for me, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to put that in as a second color, hex, paste that in there. So I'm selecting this little box over here to change the color. I'm going to take this color and take this first one, take this one, hex, and paste that in there. All right, so if I do something like this, I'll be able to see a gradient forming, but I don't see it just yet because the light is not that visible. So what I'll do is actually, I'll delete this light, and then I'll do Shift A mesh, not mesh, light, and then add an area light. I'll do GZ to bring it up a bit, and then I'll change the strength, not the strength, where's the object data properties, change the power to be 500, and then do Shift D and then G X to kind of move it on the x-axis, and change, well, not change really anything. That's kind of it. If I go back to shading, I mean to the text, I'll be able to see now that if I move it, let me go to material. There we go. If I move it, there's a gradient, a vertical gradient going on. And the reason it's going up and down is because of the Z. We decided to separate by the Z axis. If I were to put, I don't know, Y, well, no, let me do X. And then I were to change the color, it would go left and right. Because again, the x-axis is the red one, and it's going left and right, while the y goes forward and backwards, so that really wouldn't make sense in this case. But then the z goes up and down. So for me, I would want a gradient, a vertical gradient. So I'm going to change it to z. And so this is how you kind of work with the colors. I'm going to do maybe dark here, and then light kind of over here. It's kind of a gradient. All right, so that's kind of what it's looking like, and I think I'm going to leave it like that. So the position for this one, the dark one, the color is 006D77, and the position is 0.068. And for the light color, the color is 83C5BE, and the position is 0.377. All right, and that's it, right, for the gradient. So then now I'm going to go to layout. I'm going to work with the backdrop. Let me go to render preview at the top right corner. I'm going to do S and then X to scale the backdrop. And then I'm going to take the backdrop, give it a material, click on new. I'm going to make it metallic. So I'm going to do something like 1. And then I might make it less, actually more shiny. So something like this. And then maybe give it a color of black. Or I could give it a color of white. Now, what makes it fun are the lights. So if I take the lights, I can actually give them the colors that I want. So I'm going to take this one. Let me take this one also. I don't even know which one I pasted. I think I had the other one. Let me take this one. All right, so I have the light. I went to the color, changed the color. Now I'm going to take this one, this light. I'm going to go to the color, the box, paste that in the hex, right? And now we have something like this. So what I like to do is kind of scale it so it's more visible, kind of scale it. And then the way there's like a really strong division between the two. So to fix that, I'll go to the backdrop, and if I kind of play around with the roughness, the more the more rough it is, the more smoother it looks. The less rough, the more literal it looks. Like you can literally see the lights, because it's, again, roughness is the shininess. So imagine like a floor being really shiny, you can see the reflection of the lights, just like you see right now. So I kind of do kind of like a blend in between the two, something like that. And then I might just the closer you get to the light, or the closer the light gets to the floor, the shinier. Oops, I didn't mean to target the backdrop. Kind of like the more shinier it is. But I don't want, but then it loses the gradient effect, right? So I'm gonna do Control Z to kind of go back up here. Maybe even make them a little bit more like that. I think that's fine. Maybe I'll go to shading and make this a little bit more prominent, or maybe even make it darker, just something like that. So back in layout, that's what I'm looking at right now. So then at this point, it's time to render the image. And so I'm going to go to the button under the escape key and then hover over front. And then I'm going to zoom in and I'm just going to click on this a little bit, kind of move it here, zoom out a bit. And then I'll do Control Alt Numpad 0 to align my camera to the view. If you don't have a numpad, you go to Edit, Preferences, Input, and you make sure Emulate Numpad is on so that your keyboard emulates the numpad. But yeah, so Control Alt Numpad 0. And basically it aligns my camera to the current view. And what I want to do is zoom in a little bit more. So to get out of that view, I press the middle mouse button. To go back into the view, I press on Numpad 0. All right, so middle mouse button, a little bit more to the right, a little bit more inwards, Control Alt Numpad 0 again. All right, and this is what I'm looking at. So I might want to do a little bit to the left. All right, so I think that's fine. And yeah, that's it. That's honestly literally it. So I'm gonna do Control S to save this. And then I'm going to go to the top, click on render, and then render image. And this is it, the little result over here. And that's it for today. Bye.